philosophies. Now, with his theory of the mechanism of natural selection, it was now possible to explain scientifically, at least in theory, that no creator God was actually necessary after all. Life could have come about on its own and then evolved without God. Now, science and philosophy now teamed up to shatter the whole religion had on the populace, with the acceptance of the theory of evolution and the ramifications of that thinking would be the most bloodiest century that actually we know in human history. So there was a great moralist, Viktor Frankl, which was a survivor of Auschwitz, who wrote, if we present man with a concept of man which is not true, we may well corrupt him. When we present him as a bundle of instincts, as a pawn of drive and reactions, as a mere product of hereditary and environment, we feed the nihilism to which modern man is, in any case, prone. Now, he said, I became acquainted with the last stage of corruption in my second concentration camp, Auschwitz. The gas chambers of Auschwitz were the ultimate consequence of the theory that man is nothing but the product of hereditary and environment. And I am absolutely convinced that the gas chambers of Auschwitz and the others were ultimately prepared not in some ministry or other in Berlin, but rather as at the desks and in the lecture halls of nihilistic scientists and philosophers. Now, the words of Hitler posted in Auschwitz in hope that the human race would never again descend to such savagery are a sobering reminder of what happens when we actually reject God's moral absolutes. He says, I freed Germany from the stupid and degrading fallacies of conscience and morality. We will train young people before whom the world will tremble. I want young people capable of great violence. In Paris, relentless and very cruel. So when we look back on recent history, we can understand how the ideals of a godless universe of the human species emerging and persisting by running the gauntlet of the survival of the fittest, if you will, evolving and rising to exalted levels of power, led inevitably to the shameful fact that in the first half of the 20th century, more people were killed by other people than in all history until that time. And the justification for a greater part of this carnage, if you will, was the ideal of natural selection inherent in Darwin's theory of evolution. The application of the survival of the fittest principle to human affairs came to be known as what? Social Darwinism. Although Darwin apparently did not condone the extrapolation of his natural selection theory into social relationships, he did argue that human evolution proceeded through warfare and struggle. Now, one observer actually noted this: there are few evolutionists who have been embarrassed by the social implications of evolution and who have stressed cooperation instead of struggle as a factor in evolution. Others have said that it has been improperly applied when it is used to defend militarism and social abuses. Of course, the application of Darwinism and Darwin's survival of the fittest to human affairs by unscrupulous men has no direct bearing on the question of whether human beings and other creatures evolved from simple forms of life. But these abuses have been sanctioned and abetted with evolution as an excuse. And if evolution is not true, it actually seems all the more tragic. So the evolutionary principle, having produced its deadly fruit throughout much of the 20th century, will no doubt continue to flourish in the 21st. The emphasis now is on improving mankind genetically. Now, researchers speak of extending lifespans and actually eradicating diseases with gene therapy and actually what's called genetic implants. There is common talk of improving physical and mental abilities and bestowing individual natural talents through genetic manipulation. Now, at the moment, we struggle with the ethical, emotional, and actual legal issues that even entails. Now, in short, many think man is able to direct his own evolution. Maybe that's not such a strange thought. It is the natural outcome of man trying to find his own way, to a superior life, yet again, without God. Perhaps even indicating and including the notion that through artificial evolution, humanity can overcome death and at last attain immortality. Now, it would be much simpler and surer to believe God in the first place. Man can achieve everything that is good for him now, a happy and fulfilled life, and in the future, immortality in the divine family of God. But man tries to achieve it on his own terms, without acknowledging or obeying his Creator. His selfish nature leads him to satisfy his cravings, thus bringing on himself the physical, mental, and emotional penalties that result from actually breaking God's laws. But he turns around and uses the intellect God gave him to try to circumvent paying the price. Now, it's ironic how firmly man holds to belief in absolute physical and natural laws, but vigorously objects to the very idea that the spiritual laws of God are just as immutable and absolute. When it comes to human behavior, somehow humanity finds a way to explain that God doesn't exist, thinking that will remove the actual consequences. Make no mistake, when mankind breaks any of God's law, denying that God exists in no way removes the price that must be paid. So, in conclusion, of all his earthly creation, God gave human beings alone the ability to choose whether we will live by his laws or by whatever values we assign to ourselves for our own satisfaction. Now, God's laws are not mere duties, but he designed us so we will be most happy, satisfied, and fulfilled by doing what he says. Now, since God made us, he knows what is best for us, and he gives us instructions that actually will benefit us. Man is not a mere puppet in God's hands. We have the choice of whether or not to do what he says. That's why he gave us free will. Now, at Deuteronomy 30:19, there's a good place to start a reference about this. So we can either recognize him as the creator and lawgiver of the cosmos that he actually is, or we can deny that he even exists. We can choose to live a meaningless life, or we can choose a life with purpose. Now, we've talked about this before, touched on it, that people in general, especially when we talk about older people and people in general, they live